All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our best bets for Week 9 in college football. Get things started with how our best bets fared in Week 8. Another winning week in the books. We've been doing this since like Week 4 or 5, and every single week has been one in the green for us, Nick. So I think we're doing great, pumping out some good bets for the people. Last week, though, came up just shy. Iowa had a -2.5. They ended up winning the game by 1. I should have fed you guys money line, but Iowa ended up having a field goal block return for a touchdown by Penn State, so they got beat by their own medicine to kind of blow that one. Stanford 18.5, though. We also both had money on it like plus 500, and they won it outright. Fading Florida State continues to be the best idea in the world. Georgia Tech ends up handling Duke. The over in the Air Force game came close there late, but ultimately was not successful. And then Troy easily scampered by. There was a few other bets we could have put on here, Nick. That were also green last week overall for the covers. It was great for the brand.
Yeah, I think it was a really good week last week. I really liked what we saw. Obviously, we're continuing to fade Florida State, who are on a bye this week. Although, if I could bet on the bye week, I might, just because things seem to be unraveling rapidly down there in Tallahassee. Stanford, that was a great game. If you ended up staying up very late on the East Coast for that game, it was a really solid matchup. But no FSU this week, so we're going to transition a little bit here. We got some options on the board. I thought that Wyoming Air Force over was going to find a way to hit. It didn't. At the end of the day, those defenses played really strong in the first half. They made it close in the second half, but failed to reach that mountaintop at the end of the day. Troy looked really good. I think they're a really solid team in the Sun Belt, and I've been very happy with that. Well, Georgia Tech money line, that is a very talented team in the ACC. Dare I say the best team in the ACC. A fun team to watch. It just got a little unlucky with the Iowa-Penn State matchup. But we got 5 picks here that I think are pretty solid we're going to talk about. We're going to hopefully keep this good energy rolling into the next week.
Now let's get started. My first best bet, Michigan State, 14 and a hook at home against their rival Michigan. The Wolverines got blown out by USC a few weeks ago, bounced back and beat Washington. Low scoring first half before they ended up pulling away and shutting out what is a really good Washington defense in that second half. They had 400 plus yards of offense, some pretty respectable balances. They got things going in that second half. Bryce Underwood this year seems to be getting better per week. Donovan McCulley's been a very impressive receiver for him. Explosive pass plays, though, have been hard to come by. Justice Haynes, they're hoping to have him at full health for this game, so he did not play against Washington. Jordan Marshall, though, played very well in his absence, 133 yards and a touchdown rushing. Going up against the Michigan State team that's not awful, right? This is a team that's played some tough opponents. The UCLA game was a little embarrassing at home, getting blown out, but they fought and played Indiana on the road last week. Ended up covering that one, and then USC was a game they played a couple weeks ago earlier as well, and then Nebraska. So, I mean, you've played some tough opponents, right? This is an offense I think is capable of Aiden Childs. They're still not really growing at the rate that I'd like to see, but he is protecting the football, dishing it to 2 really good receivers in Amari Kelly and Nick Marsh. They both have 400 plus each. And then Mekhi Frazier is leading what is a bit of a weak ground and pound attack, 123 yards per game. They have yet to hit 90 yards over the last 3, and they're probably not going to do it here against a phenomenal run defense in Michigan that doesn't give up a whole lot. Only twice this year they've given up over 130 yards. That was to SC and Oklahoma on the road. I think they can keep this one close, Nick, because I don't think Michigan State is really that bad. Their defense is giving up about 33 points per game, and some of these performances haven't been ideal. 3 of the last 4 they've given up 400 plus yards in rushing. Their rushing defense has not been very good. But in a rivalry game, emotions are going to be hot. I think that they can certainly hang around in this one. I think 14.5 is a pretty good play because even though Michigan has a very stout defense, I don't think their offense is just going to be able to generate enough, especially on the road here where they've struggled immensely so far this year. Other than the Nebraska game, they really got their rushing attack going and were able to pull away and win that game by only 3 points. So I think that Michigan State can definitely hammer in this one and hang around.
Yeah, I think they can certainly hang around in prime time. 14 and a half. That's, over 2 touchdowns, barely over 2 touchdowns on the road at Spartan Stadium for the Michigan Wolverines prime time on NBC. This is the 10-year anniversary of the matchup between them and Michigan State, where Michigan State returned that fumble, the punt, trouble with the snap, the famous call. Obviously, it wasn't on the exact date. It was a couple days ago on October 17th, but the 10th game since then. So I think it's very interesting to note that was iconic moment in college football, the trouble with the snap, that Michigan State ended up returning that punt or fumbled punt to win that game and upset Michigan at the Big House here. I think Michigan will win this game, but I do agree. I think it's going to be close. I think this is a Michigan State team that not enough people are giving credit to. The talks of firing Jonathan Smith make 0 sense to me. I think you have to keep him at this moment in time. I think the team is progressing. Obviously, it's not progressing quite how we hoped it would, but I think they're showing some life. They're showing some progress here. They could still make a bowl game with the schedule they have. It will certainly be tough, but they could find a way to get into one of those lower tier bowl games if things go right. And I think Jonathan Smith will get this team firing in year 3 next year. I think he's a good head coach. I think Childs is a quarterback that's still, putting together some solid pieces. Again, it's a little bit rough, but still a guy that's getting better so far this season. 1,200 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 65% comp rate for him, 27.1 points per game for the Michigan State offense, giving up 32.7 points per game. I think they'll be able to keep this competitive here. I think they'll be able to fight here. I think the passing attack will be enough to keep them in here. I think they've been solid through the air, 12 touchdowns to only 4 picks so far. The secondary has been very brutal, but this is a Michigan offense that's not been really a phenomenal passing the ball. They've really been a run-first defense or offense that has had a lot of success on the ground, and the Michigan State run defense gave up 4.24 yards per attempt. Isn't that bad of a unit either here. Michigan's obviously a pretty strong team. They're a top 25 team. They snuck their way back in. Bryce Underwood's continuing to develop under center, and he's certainly getting better throughout the season. Justice Haynes has been incredible at running back, but this is a Michigan offense that's going to try to run the ball, control the clock, so I expect a lower scoring game, and this is a big opportunity for Michigan State to keep it competitive and lose this one probably by 9, 10 points, something like that when it's all said and done here. I think this Michigan State offense will be able to score just enough points. I think Childs will have a solid day in front of the home crowd to put them in this contest and keep it close. I like that it's over 2 touchdowns. It makes me feel good about this one. I just can't see Michigan blowing out this Michigan State team right now. I think there's a lot of talent on this Michigan State roster in a rivalry game. I know they haven't looked great the last 2 weeks, but I think the tide is turning in that direction. I think Childs will have a solid day. I think the defense will get just enough stops, combined with the fact that Michigan's going to probably try to run the ball a lot here, keep that clock moving. It all kind of plays in the favor for this to be a lower scoring game that finishes something like 21-10, something in that regard that would ultimately cash the plus 14.5 for the Spartans here. I'm very intrigued in this game in prime time, a rivalry game that's obviously not getting a lot of love this week because the fact that Michigan State doesn't have the greatest record this season, but I think it's worth tuning into. Crazy things happen in a rivalry game. I think this will be a close one. I like the 14.5 here a lot.
Now I go to my next favorite bet. If I'm going to get burned by one, it's probably going to be this one. We're trying to overthink things. I just think that Kentucky, coming off a very resilient performance against Texas, they covered almost 12.5 there, went to overtime, nearly won the game. This is a team that's obviously going to struggle this year, as expected. They're currently 2-4, have not won a conference game, and they're unlikely to. But this is a team, you can look at their stats right all you want, but if you watch this team, you know their defense is always going to be tough, especially at home. They got 6 interceptions this year. They have some legit talent. Guys like Alex Afari, Ty Bryant, J.Q. Hardaway. I mean, there's all kinds of players here. And I also think they have some nice pass rushers as well, led by Humphrey Grace, David Gusta. I mean, they have competitive players, right? And this defense is coming off a phenomenal effort against Texas. I think that the biggest difference maker, though, for me, is this rushing attack, I believe, will get going against this Tennessee defense. Seth McGowan's a running back they love. He's having a good year. Dante Dowdell right behind him. I mean, this is a great 1-2 punch going up against the Tennessee run defense that's not been very good this year. 133.7 yards per game. That number was brought down a good bit because they had a good performance against Alabama, but everyone else has really been teeing off on this rushing defense. Basically 3 games of 200 plus allowed in conference because they gave up 198 to Georgia. So I'm going to round it up. 3 games of 200 plus, Nick. The run defense has not been great. The pass rush, though, is a phenomenal unit for Tennessee, coming off a bit of a quiet week as well, though. Joshua Joseph, Tyree West, Caleb Herring, some nice defensive linemen that could potentially blow up what is a pretty poor Kentucky offensive line. This is a quarterback group that I think is going to continue to struggle through the air. Cutter Bowley, though, he played as well as he could. 258 yards against a very good Texas defense. He was very efficient, knew where to go with the football, and his smart decision-making kept them in that football game. I think they're going to do the same thing here, Nick. I know Tennessee has a great offense, putting up 44 points per game. Great receivers. Aguilar's really fitting the scheme well. They had a couple of mistakes last week that ended up making that score a lot wider in Tuscaloosa. So the offense is still really good for Tennessee. But I think Kentucky's going to, again, slow this one down, come up with some crucial stops, run the football very well, and they'll be able to cover 9.5. I don't know if they're going to win the game, but I think they'll keep it really close.
Yeah, I think they will keep it competitive. Speaking, from one team, Michigan State, that shouldn't fire their coach, to another team that shouldn't fire their coach, Mark Stoops. Now, I know his buyout's very weird, and I think they have to pay it all, within 30 days of firing, so I don't think they would do that anyway, because I just don't know if they can financially afford to do so in the Bluegrass State. But I think this is a team that should keep Stoops. He's done a phenomenal job with this team, and they're certainly going to be competitive at home. This game, 7:45 at Kroger Field. It's going to be that late SEC Network game. I think that benefits Kentucky, right? Good crowd under the lights there, a tough place to play, even though the team is not the best in the world. I think they'll certainly put up a good fight and be competitive. When you look at Tennessee, this is a defense that's giving up 30.4 points per game, which is not a great number at all. Gave up 37 to Alabama in the loss. Prior to that, they had given up 30 plus in all their previous games. other than the East Tennessee State game and the Syracuse game at the start of the season. The run defense is a decent unit, but like you said, it's a little bit skewed because they played some bad teams. A tough front part of the season. They also had Alabama last week, who were not really able to run the ball. 3.34 yards per attempt. I think Kentucky will have success on the ground. This is a rushing attack that's finally getting to swing about 4 yards per carry on the ground so far this season. 11 touchdowns. They're finally finding their footing a little bit. 22.5 points per game. I'm expecting another lower scoring game here, even though Tennessee games have been high scoring throughout the season. I think this one will grind itself down a little bit here. This is a Tennessee offense that is pretty high flying, right? With 44.1 points per game. I think this is an opportunity for this to be a lower scoring game, more grinded out. It's never easy playing in Lexington. It's never easy playing in Kentucky. This is a team that's going to put you in a dogfight. They're going to punch you in the mouth over and over again. It's going to be a lower scoring, tougher game here. I think that really plays to Kentucky's strong suit to keep this a competitive fight. They'll probably end up losing by 6-7 points when it's all said and done. I don't think their quarterback play is good enough with Cutter Boley, but I think McGowan is a great running back. He's been really solid so far this season. He's only getting more and more comfortable at that position. He'll certainly get into a groove here, and he'll attack this defense for Tennessee. I think Aguilar will have a good day when it's said and done. I think that's why they'll be able to get the job done. But I think there's some decent linebackers, Stephen Solis Jr., Alex Afari, who are both really solid for this Kentucky team, who will have decent days, maybe get some good negative plays in the backfield. I think this will be a closer contest than people realize. Tennessee, they're not going to come out and blow this team out. I think this is just a Kentucky roster that will be able to be competitive, will be able to compete here. I think the success for Kentucky, obviously, is a lower scoring, tougher affair where they succeed on the ground, while Tennessee will try to attack the defense through the air and attack a secondary that has looked a little weak at times for Kentucky. It's still a decent unit overall. They do have 6 interceptions to only 3 passing touchdowns given up. They put Texas in a tough position this past week and probably should have won that game in overtime, got stopped on 4th down. They were super competitive there. I think it'll be a similar situation. I don't know if we'll go to overtime, but I think it'll be close, be competitive, and Tennessee will ultimately get the win. But I like Kentucky to cover. This is a talented roster with good coaching, playing in a tough environment, even if it's not the toughest environment in the world. It's still a tough environment, in my opinion. Lexington, it's not easy to get out of there with a big blowout win. Ask Georgia last year, who struggled up there. Ask some of these other teams like Texas this last week that struggled up there. I think Kentucky will be competitive. They'll keep it close, and they'll cover that 9.5 and really put themselves in a good spot to fight in that game. Tennessee will ultimately get the job done, but I love the Kentucky points in this one.
Look at my next favorite bet, Minnesota 8.5. We were all over 7.5 last week against Nebraska. They ended up winning the game outright. They're going to get another pretty long number going on the road against Iowa and what figures to be a low-scoring contest. The thing about the Hawkeyes is they're never not in competitive games, right? I know they blew out Wisconsin 37-0 against that terrible offense. They were able to create a lot of turnovers and get some free scores. Every other game this year has been pretty close. Albany was able to cover against them. That was when I hammered back in week 1. They blew out UMass. No one really cares. Other than that, Nick, these games have been relatively close. That's always been the theme of Iowa. And you're going up against a team in Minnesota who does not turn over the ball a whole lot. They have 5 giveaways on the year. 4 of those came in the first 3 games of the season. They only have 1 over the last 4. So if you can protect the football against this Iowa defense, you're most certainly to hang around. And even though they're putting about 30 points per game on the sheet, Mark Gronowski in the passing attack, they're still not generating a whole lot of anything. Gronowski's really making a lot of plays of his legs to stay ahead of the sticks. He's got 10 rushing touchdowns this year, Nick. I mean, that's very impressive. So his addition has panned out one way or another. Kamari Moulton's leading the way in the backfield. This is a Minnesota defense, though. The Tenders struggles at times, but I don't think they're going to have any issues with the Iowa defense by any means. The Purdue and the Ohio State game were rough for them. They bounced back this past week, demolished that Nebraska offensive line. They couldn't run the ball. They had a boatload of sacks. Iowa, of course, they have a phenomenal offensive line, though. It's going to be hard to get that same type of penetration from your guys like Anthony Smith, Carter Menz, Devon Williams, and Jackson Howard. But this is still a very good team. It's going to slow down the run, keep it close, and I trust Drake Lindsey here on the road to be able to protect the football. And then I think Darius Taylor is going to make some big plays as well to keep it close. Nick, 8.5. I don't understand this line because, again, Iowa is always in these very close games, especially in conference, and a team like Minnesota really matches up well in terms of physicality against this opponent. So I think this is a lock of the week.
Yeah, I like this play a lot here. This is a Minnesota team that I was quite high on last week against Nebraska. I ended up actually catching a slip that was Minnesota money line and Louisville money line on that Friday night. 2 teams that pulled nice upsets there and looked good while doing it. Minnesota was certainly a team I felt better about going into that Friday matchup. Obviously, Louisville was traveling to Miami. Minnesota was at home against Nebraska. But I think the recipe for Minnesota was to run the damn ball, and that's what they did. Darius Taylor, $150 and a touchdown for him on 24 carries. He looked really solid in that game. He looked like he was finally getting himself comfortable comfortable in that situation. I'm expecting him to continue to do so. Minnesota was really struggling to run the ball the first couple of games this season. 3.86 yards per attempt and 9 scores is still not exactly where they want to be, but they got back to old ways in that win over Nebraska. I think they will continue to do so. I think this is an opportunity for them to keep running the ball and putting themselves in a good position here where they can relieve some of that pressure on Drake Lindsey, who is a good quarterback, but he's still learning a lot and getting comfortable. Yes, Iowa's run defense is good, 2.83 yards per attempt and 7 scores given up, which is why I think Iowa will ultimately win the game, but I think this will be a close contest here, and Minnesota will certainly put up a fight. I think Lindsey's a good, competent quarterback who is certainly continuing to elevate this offense a little bit higher than you would have expected. 1,400 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, only 3 picks. He's been really good so far. Lameek Brockington, his top receiver, has been decent enough for this team. The defense has been solid for Minnesota, which I think has been good for this team. 3.24 yards per attempt on the ground, about just below 5 yards per play, and 19 points per game. So the defense has been really solid here. The total is pretty low for a reason. This will be a slugfest again, like it is for a lot of these Iowa games. 14.6 points per game getting up for Iowa. They're scoring 29.9. But that is benefited by the fact that they scored 30 plus 4 times this season, which is really not normal for Iowa. They had they had that shootout with Rutgers that they ended up scoring 38, and they put the 37 spot on a bad Wisconsin team. I think this will be more of a down to earth, a type of game you expect out of a Minnesota Iowa, where it's gonna be low scoring. It'll probably finish like 14-10 when it's all said and done. Here, these teams will trade below. Mark Karnowski is not really the greatest passer. He's not really elevating that 800 yards passing, 3 TDs, four picks. Not good, but he's been a good rusher. He's been really productive on the ground. He has his 10 rushing touchdowns, which is certainly helping out the team. But Minnesota, they're going to not be an easy out here. I think this is an opportunity for them to go on the road, be competitive. I don't think they're going to win the game, but they will certainly be competitive. They'll fight to the end here. A lower scoring affair where both teams have a lot of success running the ball. Look for Darius Taylor to have another decent day, probably over 100 yards on the ground again. He's been quite solid getting back into that groove for this offense. I think Minnesota is just a good team in the Big Ten. They're going to go to a bowl game. PJ Fleck will get his guys into a bowl game again. I think he's a good coach, and he's put this team in a good spot, even if the schedule's a little tough going forward with a trip to Oregon looming in the future. It's obviously a loss, but there's some other big opportunities for a win. I like Minnesota to be competitive here. I think they'll lose the game ultimately, just like the other two dogs that we have covering on this list, but I don't think any of them will win outright. But I think Minnesota has the best chance to win outright of the ones we've talked about so far. They'll take it to Iowa and Iowa City. They'll make this a contest here. I think they just have too much power on that offensive line that's finally getting a groove and have too good of a rushing attack to not be competitive in this game. They'll lose, but it'll be certainly close. They'll give Iowa a game. It will certainly be an interesting one going down at CBS at 3:30.
Now we're going to look at Nick's two bets he's going to dish out for you guys. Virginia minus 10.5 on the road against North Carolina. I'm not fully sure about this one. I took UNC last week, same spread against Cal on the road, and they were able to cover that one, and they probably should have won the game as well. I just feel like everyone's giving this program a lot of negativity, and I know, Nick, that it's easy to just bash on Belichick with all the shenanigans and whatnot, but this team's doing exactly what we thought they would, and that's absolutely nothing. If you look at their portal class, you kind of figured they probably wouldn't be in store for a lot of success this year. Virginia, on the other hand, a team that's clinging to only one loss this year, still in the thick of things in the conference. They beat Florida State a couple weeks back. We had the money line. It was like plus 275. UVA cashed on that one. They beat Louisville on the road a couple weeks ago. It took 2 defensive touchdowns, but their offense was not productive at all. 237 yards on 63 plays. It's abysmal. They had 14 points, though, off those turnovers, and they won. And then Washington State, they survived them. 2-point win. The Cougars have been incredibly scrappy. I don't know who they're playing this week, but maybe we should have took that spread right, because they just did that same thing to Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. This is a team right now, Virginia, Nick. Their offense has been abysmal after balling out to start the year. They had a couple of 500-yard games. They had a 700-yard performance against an FCS team. I mean, this is a really good offense that all of a sudden is just dragging their feet. Jamari Taylor's a really good running back. I think they're very deep at that position of Harrison Whaley and Xavier Brown. Chandler Morris is a phenomenal quarterback with some good pass catchers led by Trell Harris and Cam Ross. So for some reason, they're just not clicking. I think all this success, Tony Elliott needs to manage it. He's a good offensive coach. He needs to bring them back down to earth, and this is a good way to get back on track against this North Carolina team where, I mean, they're just weak at everything, right? You can't just sit here and try to dissect the matchups because they're all over the board, and that's where coaching comes into play. And this defense played, lights out last week, 294 yards allowed on 71 plays. That's the best performance of the year for them. I know they were good against Charlotte and Richmond, but against a legitimate opponent, right, that's by far their best performance here in conference play. So 10.5 I'm weary of, and it's easy to just hammer against the Tar Heels, Nick. I'm just not so sure of it, but I do love the point you're going to make, and that's the offense is going to be in store for a bounce back at some point. Maybe this is the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, you certainly know me well, and you know that I'm going to say that the offense is due for a bounce back and a big opportunity. I think this matchup against Carolina is profiles to be the perfect matchup for North or Virginia to bounce back. In my opinion, I think this is an offense that can really do a lot. Look, and you look at North Carolina; they're not a good team, right? There's no way to put it. Carolina's a bad team. They're not a good team. Belichick, the sideshow circus, Jordan Hudson, all that stuff is absolutely out of control. The team is not good, and we knew they weren't going to be good. When you looked at their portal class, you looked at them on paper, there was no way this team was going to be competitive in the ACC, much less, win the conference like some people were suggesting, or even get to a bowl game. This is just not a good team on paper. They didn't bring enough talent in, and you cannot overcome that, even with Bill Belichick being a legend of the game, which is not going to happen. So this is not entirely shocking. Maybe they looked a little bit worse than I would have expected, but they just don't look good. They have an interesting battle with Syracuse on a Halloween up in the Dome, a battle of two bad teams in the ACC as Syracuse season has been derailed by some injuries. I think this is an opportunity. When you look at this defense for Carolina, 3.44 yards per attempt given up on the ground is not bad. 5.23 yards per play, though, not phenomenal. A little bit higher than you probably would hope. 9 passing touchdowns given up, only 4 interceptions, and that's where it lies for me. I think this is an opportunity for Virginia to attack through the air, attack that secondary that's been weak, and put a lot of points on the board and have a solid day. I think Chandler Morris has been phenomenal. 600 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks, 40 points per game for this offense, even if they stalled out a little bit the last 2 weeks. 40 points per game, pretty strong number. 5.08 yards per attempt on the ground, 6.24 yards per play, 12 passing touchdowns to 5 interceptions. I think they're going to blitz this Carolina team through the air. They're going to attack them over and over again. They're going to, isolate those corners that have been weak. They're going to isolate a defense that's struggled against the pass and put themselves in a good position to put a lot of points on the board and cover this 10.5 point spread. I think this is a very talented Virginia team that's in a really good spot. They're 6-1. They're playing good football in the ACC. Yes, they struggled against Wazoo this past week, but that's a pesky team that's hard to really get a good read on. They're going to fight. They're going to be tough on you. They're playing Toledo this week. I believe they're slight favorites in that matchup against Toledo. I certainly think Wazoo is good value to win that matchup at home. That's a very talented team that's going to be scrappy and fight here. But this is a big opportunity for Virginia to get back. I think they're going to put a lot of pressure early on a North Carolina team, and I think their defense has not been bad. 23.3 points per game given up for Virginia's 3.68 yards per attempt on the ground, 5.46 yards per play are not bad numbers. And this has been a North Carolina offense that just really has been abysmal. 18.7 points per game, 3.85 yards per attempt, 4.75 yards per play. So I think this is going to be a big opportunity for Virginia to win this game comfortably, win like 35-10, something like that, and really put themselves in a good spot, score a lot of points early, attack often on the road, put yourself on a good fit here, make that crowd non-existent like it has been for most of the season. Virginia, they're in a good spot in the ACC to compete for a conference title, compete to go play in the conference title game. I think the offense is in a good spot here. I think they'll finally get back firing on all cylinders, put a lot of points on the board, cover this 10.5 point spread, and look good doing it.
Moving to the next final bet here, we're going to go to SEC country and play a total. You have Arkansas and Auburn. The Tigers coming off 4 straight losses, all very competitive against very highly ranked teams in the conference. The defense has been flat out elite. They've held all those opponents to 24 points or less. Now they're going to travel to take on the top offense statistically in the conference, led by Talon Green. He's helping pump out 37 points per contest. He's got an abundance of production, well over 300 yards per game. 20 plus touchdowns on the year. Green's been exceptional. The defense, on the other hand, has been awful. 33 points per game that they're giving up. That's one of the bottom marks in the conference. So it's certain they might score, right? Potentially. I don't know, because this Auburn defense is unreal, led by their edges, Keyron Crawford and Kendrick Falk. They also have Xavier Adkins, who's been balling out at linebacker. I mean, this is an elite defense that could win a national championship legitly. The problem is their offense has had no pulse. I was watching the Missouri game, Nick. I had it on in the corner. In Missouri and Auburn, they would have a big play on offense. They'd get in the plus territory, so I'd look away for 2 minutes, look back, and they had no points, and Missouri had the ball. And this happened the entire night, dude. Why can we not score? So now that we're playing this awful defense, I think they have the potential, right? They're not completely anemic. They still have Cam Coleman putting up numbers. Jeremiah Cobb in the rushing attack against Baylor proved that they can do some stuff. Jackson Arnold, I mean, he's very up and down, but looks like we're going to have a bit of a QB competition this week that can maybe get things sparked in the right direction. I think they can run the football in Arkansas. They're playing this great defense, the Hogs is. So I'm not sure if they'll do their part potentially, but I think this is probably a pretty good bet, Nick. I'm going to stay away from it, though, because this one could be really scrappy. But why can we not score the ball, dude?
Yeah, this is a play I really like here. This Auburn offense just has not been good, right? There's no really easy way to say it. They've just been bad. 116th in the nation in passing yards. Before we started, I said to you, "Oh, my pick's going to be a game that's going to be an over. It's going to be feature two SC teams." Can you guess which one? I'll give you a hint. One of the teams is 116th in the nation in passing, and it was like hard to figure out which team in the SEC was that bad at throwing the football. It's Auburn. Jackson Arnold cannot throw the football. He just stands in the pocket and gets hit. He looks completely lost out there. That's not working out, right? And you have to question what Hugh Freeze is doing with him under center, and that's a whole other conversation. But this is still, I think, an offense that has an opportunity to score points against a bad defense. 23.6 points per game for Auburn so far this season, giving up 17.9. When you look at Arkansas, it's completely opposite. 37.1 points per game. That's 17th in the nation, but giving up 32.7 points per game. That's 121st in the nation. Absolutely abysmal here. This is a big opportunity for the Auburn offense to get right and really put up a big SEC win for Hugh Freeze on the road, which he has not gotten many of those during his tenure down on the Plains. I think this is an opportunity for the rushing attack, which has looked pretty solid, 4.35 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns there, to have a decent showing. I think they'll run the ball successfully here against this Arkansas team, and I think Arkansas will score a lot of points. This is my favorite offense to watch in the SEC, and Taylor Green is probably my favorite quarterback to watch when you isolate it. Yes, the team's bad, but isolating him and just watching him specifically has been so fun because he is so talented on the ground and so talented through the air. He's finally kind of getting himself into that position where he can really be a true dual threat quarterback. 1,900 yards passing, 17 touchdowns for Green, while also pitching in on the ground and being a complete asset with his legs, which I think is a big thing to look at as well. 589 and 5 scores for him, second on the team in those marks. I think this will be a offensive shootout between two bad teams that will put a lot of points on the board. They're going to fight tooth and nail. I don't know who's going to win this game, right? Part of me thinks that Auburn's due for a win. They'll get the job done. But Arkansas, they're also due for a win. Neither team have conference wins right now. When you look at Arkansas, every single game they've played so far this season, if the line was set at 56.5, the over would have cashed in all of those games. They've been an absolute slugfest over and over again, a lot of high-scoring affairs. Yes, Auburn, a lot of those games would have been under. Pretty much every game would have been an under for Auburn in that situation. But I think in this situation, when I compare a team that can really score a lot versus a team that can't really score a lot, I think this will be an opportunity for the offense to finally come together a little bit for Auburn and put some points on the board. I think 56.5 is not a bad number at all. I think this is a lot of ways to get there here. I think a close game, maybe even an Auburn big win or an Arkansas big win if Auburn completely collapses and falls apart, which is more likely. That could really put you in a good spot here. I could see Arkansas running away with this one if all goes their own way and they figure things out down there in Fayetteville. A very intriguing matchup. Not sure how many people are going to be watching this one on the earlier slate, 12:45 on SEC Network, but a very intriguing matchup in the SEC. I think at some point the Auburn offense has to show a pulse here. Playing a bad defense, you would think this is the opportunity to do so, and you know that Arkansas offense is going to put points on the board no matter who they're playing. This is a big opportunity for me. I like 56.5. I think over that makes a ton of sense here. I like this play. I feel pretty good about it. I'm pretty excited to play this one.
Arkansas in 3 conference games, averaging 516 yards per contest. All of those have come against ranked opponents. So, yeah, this offense is putting up a number every single week. So that's going to be it for today's episode. If you guys like, come subscribe. See you next time.